everybody, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today on John's Briefs, I'm here with my friend Terry Johnson, the Senior Vice President for Legal Affairs for Firearms Legal Protection, and also Scottie Pippen's #1 fan. And we are going to talk today about the standard of murder versus manslaughter, particularly in the Daunte Wright case. Now more than ever, you need trusted coverage to help you win the fight after the fight. The company I trust and recommend is Firearms Legal Protection. They offer discounts on all their plans at the link in the description. I recommend the premium plan. So we'll let him explain about Scottie Pippen another day. But of course, I mean, the nation is gripped right now with a whole bunch of these police uses of force. And in particular, former officer Kim Potter's been charged with manslaughter in the death of Daunte Wright. And we both watched the video. It's been on the channel. But a lot of people are asking, and we're hearing a couple things. Number one, oh, there's no way that she didn't know that it was a taser. Number two, that this is murder, plain and simple. So Terry, can you describe for us in a general sense what the difference is in the legal statutes between murder and manslaughter?
So really it comes down to intent, okay? With murder, we've all heard of premeditated, right? In other words, I'm thinking about this, I'm gonna do it, I'm planning, I'm plotting, and I go after you. That's murder. Manslaughter is because I did something negligent, something so out of the ordinary that it can cause, I don't know, it can basically cause the death of someone else. Let me give you an example. Driving down the road, if I do 75 and a 25 and a kid steps out into the street, that's not murder. I wasn't intending on running over someone, but my actions were negligent.
Right. So if I see a kid and I go, I'm going to hit that kid.
That's murder.
That's murder.
Correct.
But if I'm driving recklessly down the road, 75 and a 25, kid jumps out in front of me, my negligence, my recklessness caused the danger that caused their death, manslaughter.
Exactly.
Now, I'm doing 30 and a 25, and that kid darts out in front of me. That's probably just an accident.
It would all depend on other things. You know, your favorite response to me, it depends.
But I mean, I think we can see that there's times where somebody does something that is lamentable, that is regrettable, but isn't criminal.
Correct. However, it's one of the things I learned in law school, what are you going to do with the body? And what, in other words, even though the officer may not have intended to grab her taser, may not have intended to grab her taser, that's what she did. And as a result, she grabbed the firearm instead. And as a result of that, she's charged with manslaughter.
Right.
And the question becomes, she just doesn't get to go home as a result of that. There's got to be some form of criminal charge that comes against her.
Well, and I think in this instance in particular, I think we look at it, and I mean, obviously, if you see what happens afterwards, I mean, she resigned her position like 2 days later. She knew bad juju was coming.
Right.
And not only that, her police chief resigned that same day. So we knew bad stuff was coming. And then they charged her shortly after, but they charged her with manslaughter, not murder.
Right.
And I looked at it, and I'd love to get your thoughts, Terry, because I look at it and I go, okay, she clearly said, I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you. And then drew her gun instead of her taser and said, taser, 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 bang.
Right.
So that sounds to me like a lack of intent. Like she didn't mean to shoot him, but she still did, and so she should have, this is the left hand should have brought the taser, but the right hand brought the gun, and so he shouldn't have died.
He shouldn't have died, I agree. There's lots of, as a result of her actions, I agree, he shouldn't have died. However, is this lack of training, okay?
Okay.
That's the first thing I look at. And, let's say, let me play devil's advocate for a moment.
Oh boy, here we go.
What happens if, in fact, she actually meant to shoot him? And she pre-planned this when this guy was in the car. She said, I'm going to shoot this guy. So I'm going to make it look like it's something it's not. And she grabs, knowing that it's her gun, but she says, taser, taser, and she shoots him purposefully. At that point, you can have murder. Now, that's going to be obviously very hard to prove.
Right.
Okay? However, the big issue comes down to what's
We're not saying she did that. We're just saying it's possible.
It's possible, right. But if she were to do that, then yes, a charge of murder would be justified in my opinion.
Okay.
But because of the actions that she did, and again, let's go back. oh my God, I just shot him, or something like that.
And she said that at the end.
At the end,
And
right.
she said, oh shit, I shot him.
Right, exactly. And the other part of that is, you know, yes, you should know the difference between a taser and a firearm, but again, in the emotion, the adrenaline's going, okay? Even all of those things may be correct. The fact of the matter is, it was still an act that happened, purposefully or not, and she's got to face the music.
So there's an interesting bit here, though, that I want to ask you about, because the Minnesota statute is really interesting. And I actually put it on the main narration on this, that the Minnesota statute for manslaughter requires 2 elements. There's an and in here.
Correct.
So it's not only through their culpable negligence did they cause the risk, and then it says and these words are important because the lawyers are going to argue about them, right?
Got to have both.
Yeah, so and means it's got to have both, and consciously cause the danger that caused the death of the other.
Right.
And so you start asking the question, are they going to be able to prove that she consciously caused the death of Wright?
And that's really what it's going to come down to. You know, is consciously I'm thinking about it, or consciously defined as I use my free will to do something, okay? So for example, if I'm being coerced into doing something, or you know, someone else is pointing a gun at me, or they've got my kids at home and they say, if you don't do this, then I am going to do something to your kids. So when we hear the word conscious, I'd have to see maybe some case law or something along those lines.
Yeah, what happened on those two.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right, you know, because if we look at the other big case that happened in Minneapolis, I'm not saying the jury got it wrong, but I don't know how you convict on all 3 when, you know, there's a lot of things that go into a
Seems
jury.
like they're different crimes.
They are different crimes. But I know we're not going to go into that one, but...
we're not going to light that powder keg today.
No.
But this is how we get a manslaughter charge and not a murder charge, is basically how that goes. And but of course, I want to say to you here on John's Briefs, the way that we do this and we avoid these charges to begin with as private citizens for sure is we don't make these kind of negligent mistakes.
Correct.
And we have to know, what tool am I going for? And why am I going for it? It's actually one of the reasons that I strongly prefer a pepper spray as opposed to a taser, because the tasers that they're carrying, it actuates like a firearm.
Yes.
And so it actuates some of the same mental processes, whereas my OC spray actuates very differently. And so it's a different function and therefore a different way. And I'm not saying that that's anybody's fault or that should be changed, but it's one of the reasons I carry an OC instead of a taser.
No, and I agree with you. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. We talk about less than lethal force, use of less than lethal force. And, you know, I've been seeing many things that are out there right now. But again, until you've been in that position, you know, and it gets down to training, you know, unless you've been trained, I think her training failed her, quite honestly. Either...
It doesn't mean she's not culpable for her actions.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, if my training says, wait a minute, I have to go for this, and a recommendation to all my my viewers is that if you go for a less lethal tool, take the second to spot it and verify that you look at it. Do I have the taser? Do I have my OC spray? I'm going to OC spray you. Yep, I've got my OC spray. Here we go.
Yeah.
Because that split second of cognitive understanding can keep you, number one, from moral repercussions of taking another man's life who didn't deserve to die. And number two, could keep you out of prison for the next 20 years.
Right.
So, Terry, thanks for the knowledge, man.
Thank you.